had a lot of Igbos, you know. We're gonna get somebody, so so we're gonna go back to Nigeria right now, kings and queens, as well, yeah, because we have in the building, as I said to you, one of my favorite people ever in life. Yeah, she is an activist of international recognition, kings and queens. Born in Lagos, Nigeria, and began her political life as a student union activist at the University of Ibadan, where she graduated with a BSc honors degree in political science and government. She obtained a second degree in law from the University of Lagos, where she developed her work as a student leader and political organizer in the Students' Representative Council and the National Association of Nigerian Students, umbrella organization of the student movement, a delegate to the 1984 Senate and National Association of Nigerian Students Assembly at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. She was arrested and incarcerated with other student leaders by the military government for challenging and mobilizing mass support against the regime's attempt to coerce and ban the vibrant and independent student union movement. Forced into exile, Affiong relocated to London in 1990, where she organized as a frontline campaigner in the UK-based pro-democracy movement against military dictatorship in Africa and the struggle to return Nigeria and other African nations to democratic rule in the 1990s. She worked with the Black community in London as a grassroots campaigner and national advocate on immigration, reparations, race relations, and amnesty for unregistered immigrants. Affiong is the co-founder and current executive director of the Moyo Wataifa, Moyo Wataifa, a Pan-African women's network created to establish links between women on the African continent and in the diaspora. Greetings and welcome to Auntie Affiong. Are you with us?
Yes, greetings, Shakara. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Auntie. I can hear you. I can hear you. And if your camera's working, feel free to let the people them see you.
No, it's going to overload. It's just an internet thing out here.
I understand. Thank you for joining us, Auntie. The people have been waiting for you, so we give thanks for your presence. And I know that you've been busy today, so we appreciate your time.
Yes. I mean, what do you want me to do? How are you going to, how is this going to run?
It's the next half an hour is yours to speak to the people.
Okay. Thank you so much. Greetings, to the global African family out there. I'm seeing some of your faces, I'm catching your vibes, I've enjoyed just listening in. Let me start by bringing you warm greetings from Moyo Wataifa. It's a Pan-African Women's Network. And, our core thing is about political education and, empowerment, self-empowerment for women. But we, as political activists, we deal with, everybody, we work on a wider scale in terms of the things that afflict us as Africans. I'm not sure where to start. Let me start by paying homage, to our ancestors that have gone before us, because we sit literally on their shoulders, and we pray, for their spirits to come into us, because the work that is before us, all of us, is outstanding work. It's outstanding in the sense that, they've done their bit. It's time for us to do our bit, so that we remove this death grip, that imperialism and white supremacy has on our necks. So we want to pay homage to all our fighters that have gone before us. Let me also thank Shakara for facilitating, this sort of gatherings, as it were. You've been doing that a lot, and the quality is really, top notch, and that's good, and that's very important. Knowledge must be a weapon. At least we must use it as a weapon, as a weapon for liberation. So it's not knowledge for accumulation purposes, but knowledge as a weapon for our liberation. If the network is if my voice is going in and out, just let me know, because I wouldn't know. I'm just looking at my internet signals. Can you hear me? I see somebody still asking for video. I'm saying, you know, the network will disappear. Oh, Shakara, are you able to put up, you know, just the photograph or something? Are you able to do that?
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I'll try that. But we can hear you fine,
Okay, then.
Auntie.
So let me continue. So yes, so I was saying, you know, I really appreciate, you know, what you're doing. And if for those who haven't watched, there have been some extremely interesting discussions that Shakara has had on his YouTube channel, Shakara Speaks. You must check that out and listen to them, you know. They're very deep and I think they're important for us.
Thank you, Auntie. I appreciate it.
I was wondering what you know, what message would I bring, you know, to you all today, tonight, because it's important to bring something, you know, that will resonate, you know, that will touch you, that will spur you on, you know, to do the work. Now, whatever we are, whether we're cultural people or social people and stuff, we must realize that we must choose a particular tool of struggle that we must use, you know, for our liberation. You know, this life is not just about doing things for doing things sake, you know. It's really about us, you know, being able to raise the stakes, you know, so to speak. Now, for us, we've been thinking, you know, and it's something that worries one a lot. What is the, Frantz Fanon has a powerful quote, which continues to resonate with me. You know, he said this in the 60s, you know, that every generation out of relative obscurity must identify its mission and either fulfill it or betray it. So, you know, something that's always worried is what then is the mission of this generation? You know, what is our mission? Because Marcus Garvey's mission, you know, was for, you know, to be able to reach out to Africans all over the world, you know, and get them to recognize their Africanness, you know, and attempt to organize them as a global force. Attempt to organize them as a global force, you know, in coming together, you know, as one people. And, you know, to a large extent and very much so, that mission was fulfilled. Now, Kwame Nkrumah's mission, the mission of his generation, was the defeat of colonialism. So first of all, Garvey has, you know, tried to mobilize the race, you know, on whichever part of the world, you know, we were in. And he did that successfully. And then the mission of Nkrumah's generation was then to defeat colonialism, you know, as they had it at that time. And that mission, you know, was fulfilled. It was identified and fulfilled. So then the question is, and then of course there's been one generation between Nkrumah's time and us now. And, you know, that generation, I would say, has largely failed because that is the generation that allowed neocolonialism to be consolidated on the continent and all over, you know, where Africans find themselves. So now we are the next generation after that. And so the question is, what then is the mission of our own generation? And this is something that must bother each and every one of us. It must bother our minds. It must challenge us. What is the mission of our generation? Now, we've tried to ask ourselves that question, and it seems to us that the mission of this generation is the identification, first of all, and then the defeat of neocolonialism. The defeat of neocolonialism, you know, that's the mission of this generation. Now, it might seem a bit more difficult because colonialism was pretty straightforward, you know. It was about driving, you know, it was white people, and so we could see them, we could see that they had no business, you know, being on the continent here. And so we were able to mobilize, you know, around that. But now neocolonialism is about us. You know, it's about Black people. You know, it's about, you know, the kind of leadership or rulership rather that we have on the African continent. You know, they have the same skin as us. It's about the Barack Obamas, you know, of this world. You know, it's about what's happening in the US, you know, where you have Black faces in high places. and yet, Africans are being slaughtered, on the streets like animals. It's about Africans on the continent, still in bondage, in our millions, being ruled by people who look exactly like us, but don't have our interests at heart. Now, the point I'm making is this, that a lot of us are not able to see past that. But this is what neocolonialism is. It's white power in a black face. So how then do we, now if we've been able to identify that, how do we come against it? How do we deliver ourselves from this yoke, where we find ourselves currently in history? Now, this is something that we've decided to take on board, not just talk about it, but, see if we can begin to organize for it. There must be a new Gavi movement. There must be a new Nkrumah movement. There must be a new Malcolm X movement. I'm calling these names to say these are outstanding tasks, that these warrior ancestors, they did their bits. There must be a new Winnie Mandela, movement. There must be a new Yas and Tewa, movement. There must be a new Mbuya Nehanda movement, of people who are, of Africans who are fighting for liberation to take our race to the next level. And, in each and every one of us, there is an ancestor, if not even more than one ancestor, in each and every one of us. So then the question is, who are we? What is our role in this new phase, of our organizing for liberation? Now, it seems to me that there are some key things, that we need to begin to take on board. First of all, the question of media, of having our own media. And, gotkushTV is doing excellent work, with developing a Black media, Black-owned, autonomous, independent, and fearless. But essentially, we're going to need media, and I hate to use these criminals as an example, a CNN type of media or BBC type of media. I use them as an example in terms of the profile, where we have an African media, a global African media, not just one, as much as we're able to manage, that is global in its outlook, global in its audience, global in its reach, and where the world, not just African people, the world tunes into it to hear news, information, analysis from a global African perspective, where when things happen, we are able to tell our stories, we're able to give our own narratives. This is the level that we need to get to, and apart from, so there's the question of media. Now, there's also the question of our spirituality, because one thing, as you see, wherever we are as Black people, look at the numbers of us in the churches. All over the world, we go to church in our millions. All over the world, we go to, the mosque in our millions. And of course, those, the handful globally who have the courage to practice African traditional spirituality. And to practice African traditional spirituality in the 21st century takes courage. And for any of those who have that strength and that courage, let me just greet you now. Because still a lot of our people are still, we're still under lock and key, we still hide, we're still ashamed of the spirituality of our ancestors. We're still ashamed of the spirituality of our land. We're still ashamed of the spirituality of our culture, because white supremacy has attacked our minds, for thousands of years. Of course, before them, their cousins from the East have also come, to replace, ourselves with them. So it's just a handful, that have the courage to practice our spirituality. So I was saying that a liberation movement is going to have an element of spirituality in it, to be able to resonate with our people, to be able to mobilize, our people. So these are outstanding questions. I've identified two things: the question of developing a media, the question of popularizing and mainstreaming African spirituality. These are things, that we can take on board, as individuals and ultimately as a collective. Yeah. And then there's a question of politics, to bring back this question of African liberation onto the table in whichever part of the world that we live in. And of course, for you to be able to do that, it needs a fundamental identification of ourselves as Africans. We must stop saying, oh, we're Black people. You don't hear anybody else, going around describing themselves as white people or brown people or yellow people or pink people or whatever other colors, there are on earth. We are Africans. And we have to have the courage to identify ourselves with our homeland, to own it, to take up that space so that, there's a thing, that Africans are rising wherever they are. Because when they slaughter us on the streets, in the US, those demon policemen are very clear that they are attacking an African. And the reason why that continues, is leftovers from slavery. Those are slave catchers. So we are identified as Africans, even by the enemy. Though some of us, don't see ourselves as African. So that's another thing. The question of identity, it's powerful, because if we don't have that, then, it's going to become very difficult for us to do all these things, that I've been talking about. Then the question of political organization. Now, at the end of the day, the motherland is the center of our struggle. Look at the Chinese. If you attack a Chinese man in any part of the world, or he knows that his homeland, China, his motherland, China, will defend him. But, that's not the case, with us. So we're going to have to develop all these systems, ourselves. And of course, as time goes on, there's going to have to start to be a coming together, a coalescing, a linking up. The Shakaras in the UK, he's going to have to look for all the other Shakaras all over the continent. He's going to have to look for all the other Shakaras in other parts of the global African diaspora. Each and every one of us will have to link up with people like us, our twins, that have been dispersed, our triplets, our kindred spirits. We must begin this question of linking up, the kind of thing that Marcus Garvey facilitated. We are all going to have to be mini Garveys in terms of this outreach, reaching out, and Africans in the diaspora must reach out to Africans on the continent. And Africans on the continent must do the same thing, reach out to Africans in the diaspora. And so it seems to me that the challenge of the 21st century of us as Africans in this 21st century is the question of rebuilding the bridges. I didn't say building the bridges, I said rebuilding these bridges between the motherland and the diaspora, knowing very well that underneath this global bridge that we're trying to rebuild, because we're rebuilding across the Atlantic, that underneath the Atlantic remain the bones of our ancestors who did not survive the journey. Most of them jumped into the water, of their own volition in their attempt to go back home, to swim back home. And the other half of them, or, rather the remaining of them, were thrown overboard, from those Holocaust ships. So their bones are still there, waiting for us to recognize them, waiting for us to remember them, waiting for us to memorialize them, waiting for us to spiritualize them, but more importantly, waiting for us to use them as our battle guns, to use them as our armor and our ammunition in reclaiming back our power, in reclaiming back our land, in reclaiming back our freedom, Each and every one of us has a role to play. So we mustn't just see ourselves, oh, I'm doing music, I'm into this, I'm selling this, I'm preparing this. Every single thing must be a weapon for freedom. Every single thing in every one of us. So this to me is the mission of this 21st century generation, defeating neocolonialism. Not being black for black's sake, not accumulating knowledge for accumulation's sake and to show off, which is what a lot of us do, but to use it as a weapon for liberation, so that our children and our children's children don't come back and repeat this same narrative and this same gospel of lamentation that we get into. Every single day in different parts of the world, somebody calls the name of Marcus Garvey. Every single day in different parts of the world, somebody calls the name of Osajefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Every single day all over the world, somebody calls the name of Mbuya Nehanda. Every single day, somewhere in the world, somebody talks about Winnie Mandela. How will we be remembered? Will our names go down in history? Not because we want our names in history, but because of what we contributed when we were here. Because we were able to take that struggle to another level, to the next level. Everybody must become a soldier. And not all soldiers are obvious or seen. There are those in front on the battlefront, right up there in front. There are those in the middle, there are those on the side, and there are those you never even see. But they are working. They're soldiers with their different professions, but they are soldiers. Look at the way imperialism works. First of all, they send in missionaries. Then they send in researchers. Then they send in medical people. Then they have their diplomats. Then they send in ordinary people, their agents, their intelligence gatherers. Of course, then they send in their armies. We have got to be like this on our different levels. And let me just say that we don't have to wait for the formal structures of government as we know them, because the vast majority of our governments are neo-colonial governments, sellout governments. We must be government. We must operate like government in our different stations. And our spirits need to be humble enough to know that we must be engaged somewhere, somehow. Anyway, Malcolm X said, by any means necessary. And not everything is by combat. Because you see, one of the other ways that imperialism works, it's called, I've forgotten, it's soft culture. It's culture, but it's called soft, it's soft, it's benign. You don't see it, They put their music out, they put their films, their culture. So we aspire to it. We aspire to wear their clothes. We aspire to have their hair. We aspire to their education. We aspire to worship their gods. We aspire to look like them. These are all powerful things. So imagine when we begin to flip that script, begin to wear our own hair with pride, return their names to them, and take back our own names. Begin to, detoxify our minds and our spirits from, Eurocentrism. Begin to regain our original, ancient African spirituality. It's powerful. We can start to do so much. And the first place where you start is with yourself, in your head, in the mind, to regain the mind, regain an ancient African mind. Identify which ancestor lives in you, or which of them are trying to get back into you, because they live through us. They live through us. When the British murdered Mbuya Nehanda, and if you don't know about her, you must Google her. Was a spiritualist, the national spiritualist of Zimbabwe. So she led the struggle for their liberation, struggle. She was a spiritualist. And when they captured her, and they slaughtered her in the public, in the community, so that everybody would see what was happening, to her, so that would put the spirit of fear into them, that anybody that stands up, to white supremacy, this is what would happen to them. You know what she said? Mbuya Nehanda is spelled Mbuya. Mbuya means grandmother in their in Zimbabwe language. I think it's Shona. I hope I'm correct. M for mother, M, B for baby, U for union, Y for yes, and A for alpha. Mbuya, Mbuya, and then her name is Nehanda. Mbuya Nehanda. Nehanda is Nehande. I think somebody has put it in the chat. So just before they killed her, she said to the people, she turned and she said to them, my bones shall rise again. My bones shall rise again. So you can kill the flesh, but the spirit can never be killed. So then the question is, will we allow their bones to rise inside us? Will we? Or will we allow the white girl to still be inside us and the white boy to still remain inside us? Or are we going to eject that one and allow our ancestors back in? Because when we have that spirit, that fighting spirit, ain't nobody can hold us down. And I'm not talking about hold us down as just individuals, because a lot of us are into individualism. I'm talking about holding us down as a collective. We've got to start, working again as a collective. Start working again as a collective, as a race, as a people. I'm seeing something in the chat, says something about Wakanda won't move into Zimbabwe, Zambia border. I'm not sure I know about that, but I want to quickly talk about the move to Zimbabwe. I'm not up to date on that. But I want to talk about Wakanda, the movie. And I hope I'm not digressing. First of all, to pray for the spirit of our brother who played the lead role, that as he's just recently returned to the ancestral realm, that he'll be welcome there and that his spirit will go in peace. I want to talk about the Wakanda itself, the movie itself, and that is soft culture. Yes, somebody has helped put that there. I'll see if I can go through the questions. But one of the things that struck me when it first came out, Black Panther, what's all the excitement about? Anyway, so I relaxed for a while, and then I was seeing reviews. On the continent, guess what happened? Guess who did the previews of the films on the continent? The American Embassy. Can you imagine? The American Embassy invited artists, and important people, As soon as I saw that, I thought, That's very interesting. The American embassies all over, are previewing this film. So I hadn't watched the film. Now, when I did watch it, I understood why. Now, you see, with all the excitement around Black Panther and how it represented us and, how proud we are, there was also a very subtle, powerful message in there. And the message was that the CIA is your friend. The CIA is your friend. You see how the CIA guy, was the one who, saved the day. Imagine that. Imagine that. Sneaked in ever so nicely. And we loved it. Oh, when I saw that, I thought, oh no, these people don't give up, do they? So we must go back and watch that Black Panther again. We must go back and watch it again. So, you can't have Wakanda and, you can't have, all these things without them being at the center of it. The good white guy. And it's not just one good white guy, it's an institution, So let me leave that for a minute. I mean, I really love the costumes and of course I love the women the best. Oh, those Amazons. And by the way, this history of Amazons, of African women fighting military style, goes back centuries and centuries, back. We know the two main kingdoms. Well, there are three that I know of, and I suspect there are more. The kingdoms of Dahomey, the ancient kingdoms of Dahomey, they had women warriors. And the history there is that, for the most difficult of battles, that was where the king would send the Amazons in, because they were just they just cleaned places up. Nobody survived from any of their battles. And of course, in those days, it was spear, arrows and stuff. And some of them would slice off this is the right breast, because it gets, in the way, of the, of the, when they're fighting, with their armor and their armaments. So imagine that. Another empire that had female warriors was the Empire of Wanamutapa. That's around the place where, it's today called Zimbabwe, in Southern Africa. And of course, Libya, ancient Libya. Also, ancient Libya, I'm not just talking of Gaddafi, because that is where Gaddafi got that tradition of, it was this high class, this were the highest level of, soldiers, there were female soldiers. That was the inner guard of the king. He didn't trust, the men, around. These are female warriors, because the only way you'd get to the king was by killing all of them. That is the only way you would get through. So I'm saying this, for us as women, to know that, it's not just about being pretty, and cooking and all this, nonsense, that we, that patriarchy has made us, look at ourselves as that's all, we're able to, contribute to the world, to come and be helpmates, we do things in our own stead, we do things with our own power, we lift up our societies. We're not weaklings or second class citizens, so to speak. So we're going to have sort of imbibe all of these things inside us. Let me see if somebody's asking which country I'm from. I'm an African that was born in the country called Nigeria today. Of course, it was called many other things, before the missionaries came to save us from them. So that is that. But yes, that's my fundamental identity is African. I try not to wear these colonial badges, because it was the beautiful woman in England that decided the name of this country, or her grandmother or somebody, I'm not sure.
Auntie, when you're done, yeah, we're gonna take questions from the people anyway. So
Oh yes, okay. So let me round up. Let me listen to the questions. Thank you so much for coming in, Shakara. Thank you. So I will leave it now because I'm just going through the chat. So yes, so let me mute my mic so there can be questions, and then we'll come back.
all right, thank you very much, Auntie Affiong. You know what I'm saying, for adding that dimension to our proceedings this evening. We truly appreciate. And yeah, we're gonna take some questions now. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. And I have a couple of announcements before we get into that. Both of which are not the best of news, but we're gonna make it happen anyway. The first is that Sister Esther Stanford had let us know that she was unlikely to be able to join us today because of her current residence and the internet connection. Yeah. And so unfortunately we've confirmed that that is the case. She won't be able to join us. But also it seems we've lost the ambassador as well, who was on earlier. But those of you who were here would have seen her. And she was here, and she seems to have dropped off, and we've tried to get into contact with her yeah, since, but to no avail. Yeah, so we are trying to make an arrangement for her to yeah, for her to make some kind of representation, if not today, at some other point, and we will contact everybody to make sure that you are able to interact. But yeah, apologies for that, kings and queens. We are not sure what has happened, but we do hope our auntie is well, at the very least, because like I said, you would have seen her here. You know, she was definitely on the panel. So yeah, we're gonna try and lock that down and see what can go on for the future. So please bear with us. I hope ones can be understanding about that. And we'll definitely ensure that she's brought back to you at some point. Yeah. The team at gotkushTV worked very, very hard. I wasn't intimately involved in locking down the ambassador, but the team worked very, very hard to get her here. And she was here. So, and I know many of you are here to hear her speak. So we sincerely apologize. We hope our auntie is well. And at some point we'll try and get her to you, if not today, at some other point. I'm gonna throw it to Yemaya quickly to see if she has a question first, or a comment or a reflection coming out of Auntie Affiong, and then we'll go to the chat.
I just think that it's good to hear from the elders and the veterans in the movement, sometimes to remind us when we've lost focus of the things that we need to be thinking about. You know, some of the things that we know we should be doing, but we're not doing, in terms of being proactive in certain areas. So I give thanks for Auntie Affiong and her contribution to today's panel.
Give thanks. Auntie Affiong, this is my co-host, Sister Yemaya, one of the co-hosts on gotkushTV. And yeah, man, a powerful African woman in her own right. So I just wanted to introduce you.
Give thanks, Shakara.
Right, kings and queens, I can see you can type your questions or ask them. So I only at the moment only I forgot your name, you know, my brother. But Farthing Neverfield has raised his hand, so I'm gonna come to him, and then I'll see if there's anything in the chat. But if you want to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand, and I'll definitely come to you. Okay. Right. So go ahead, my brother.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Greetings.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sister Affiong. Really, that's for me a very powerful message you've sent down there, and absolutely, from my own end and some other African descendants and also African representatives in the UK, with respect to the African Caribbean Pacific Diaspora Youth Support Service. We are moving on. First of all, to have a three-pillar movement, which basically looks at re-education, working together, and collectively self-realization, which is the organization is based on the Kwame Nkrumah agenda, and most importantly, the Pan-African agenda. And what you've just said, everything you've said is something I seriously do not have any question for you. However, just to show that I totally agree with everything you've said. And on the 28th of November, we are having also a very huge discussion where, you know, for sure you're in Nigeria now. the first election is going to be taking place for Anambra State next year, and also on the 2023 is just coming, and you can already tell the people who have their knees on our neck are already galvanizing. But I can assure you, youths, we are looking at pulling 10 million Nigerian youths. We are going to be organizing solid musicians who are also tired about the whole thing that have been happening now. And I look forward working together with you as far as Nigeria is concerned. And not just Nigeria, as the case may be, we're also having all the whole 54 country youth representative, because it's an African, Caribbean, Pacific stuff, join this particular movement in their different countries. So is there a reason why we should not have to showcase the ability for which we want to be able to actualize our self-determination and our self-emancipation? Not really. So everything you've said is not just lying in your chest alone. I'm also echoing out that I believe that this particular platform, they are doing a very wonderful work. And for me, I kind of going to say this: I'll do everything within my power in the UK to make sure I support gotkushTV, and to make sure that everything that they do is on the right, contribution to them, to make sure that they are actually succeeding and perfectly going on well. So I look forward sharing contacts to see in the respect to Nigeria. And I also hope that every other Africans who are here today can be ignited with everything you've said, to begin now to think, what is our generation going to contribute to this particular new colonialism, as you said. Thank you.
Give thanks, my brother. Give thanks for that right there. I'm going to go on to Sister Tendai.
Oh, hello. Greetings. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sister. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, likewise. Fantastic presenting, by the way, by you two. Round of applause. Just want to say, been locked on from 5 p.m. Really good. Wasn't expecting it to be this long. So I got completely confused there. I just realized that wasn't the ambassador Afrikan. Yeah, so I got it completely twisted. So I was hurling a whole load of questions directed at the ambassador, and I was baffled, thinking, hold on, you don't know about Wakanda Village. So I don't know when we're going to next have the opportunity to have her back on the show, but I think it's important to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to say. So I really would love to try and get some of those questions across to her with regards to the Wakanda Village, which she was originally going to be taken over as the project, which was based in Zimbabwe and Zambia. But obviously she's no longer at the African Union. So it's just really would love to know if they're still in control of that project, but they've just assigned it to someone else, because obviously we know there's a lot of politics within that union itself. So yeah, it'd be great if we can try and get that question to her, what she knows about the Wakanda Village. And then also, I suppose this is a dialogue we should be having amongst ourselves, just with regards to the African Continental Free Trade Area. It's called the AFCTA, ACFTA, something like that, the initials. And we're now able to trade a lot in Africa. It was banned prior to last year. So for July 2019, we're now, as Africans, allowed to trade amongst one another. But yeah, I just wanted to know if there was any developments on that, how well that was going, opposed to trying to find out in the media. Yeah.
Well, I'll put that to Auntie Affiong. Auntie Affiong, you there?
Yes, please.
Yeah, those are some great questions, sis.
Yeah, give thanks.
Yes, I am. But
good.
I am. But I'd rather take, all the questions and then.
All of them. Okay, point taken.
Oh wow.
All right, no problem. Every speaker has their own style,
no, thanks for that opportunity to ask those questions.
Thank you, sister. As well, like I said, we're gonna do our best to arrange something, and everybody here will be invited. Basically
brilliant.
to come back for the ambassador. Unfortunately, we're not quite sure. Unfortunately, we're not able to say more because we don't actually know what's happening.
She was online, but she was online from about 6 o'clock. I think she came on about 6 o'clock. But maybe.
So
I think there's a time difference as well. They're 2 hours ahead. She's in Zim, so it's midnight. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for joining us. It's appreciated. Right, Gladys Kamal. Okay, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Gladys Kamal. We can't hear anything. Nope, still nothing, unfortunately. Yeah, if I understood sign language, I would tell you to, you know, show your video so I can interpret for you. But I'm not there yet, sis. You know what I mean? Unfortunately. All right. If you can sort your mic out, I'm gonna go to Brother Nat, and then we'll come back to you. Kings and Queens, if you want to ask a question, feel free to type it in the chat or raise your hand. To be honest with you, I have been looking for more the raising of the hands than the typing, but yeah, you can type if you wish. So Brother Nat.
Yes, first of all, to echo what Sister Tandai just said, excellent presenting. Give thanks to all the presenters so far. To both of you for presenting this. It's been smooth despite the technicals. My question, and just to hail up Auntie Affiong, powerful. I've not had the pleasure of hearing you before, so I could get the gist from what Brother Chakra said with regards to, you know, not many people, but this is one of his people. So I give thanks in hearing your, you know, the inspiration or being inspired. My question, and I put this to a lot of you know, those who've been in the fight, who are about nation building, who has been your inspiration? Who from our ancestors or living now, and I don't mind how many you say, but who would you, because I see that as a key thing. If I can take heed and learn from you, then it's even more essential to learn from, you know, the masters before, you know, the ancestors before. So who was it the inspiration to you, sister, Auntie Affiong?
You know, give thanks for that, Brother Nat. I do want to remind brothers and sisters who were here from the beginning that Baba Renoko Rashidi, no, so not Baba Renoko Rashidi, Brother Tony Warner bigged up Josina Machel, yeah, freedom fighter in Mozambique, in Frelimo, and first wife of Baba Samora Machel as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Like, yeah, but we're going to make sure that we preserve all these presentations because they were very, very good and excellent. Sister Zai Zanda, it's your time, sister.
Greetings, family. I'm
Greetings.
coming in from Melbourne, Australia. It's 7:27
Down
a.m.
under? You're coming from down under?
Down under. I'm down under, mate.
I mean, give thanks for joining us.
Sorry, what's that?
I say give thanks for joining us.
No, give thanks for organizing this. This is very exciting. I was looking forward to it for some weeks now. I just want to commend you all on this wonderful offering. And Auntie Affiong, thank you so much for the presentation. I am a Karanga woman from Southeast, what is called Zimbabwe. So I'm always very interested to hear more about the history of the place. Of course, Mbuya Nyanda plays a huge part in our mythology as people, but it's also played a huge part in sort of like the nation building project too. Munamatapa is something that I'm very interested in hearing more about. If you can tell us more about the female warriors, because I know that there's a Mbira song that talks about the women who went to war. And I'm always curious to know more about that. But also, Sister Tendai raised some issues about this Wakanda village. I'd be curious to know more about that too. That's news to me. And also, does that link in somehow with this Kabora Bassa dam project that's been on the cards for so long and then just went through after the coup? Just curious. Thank you.
All right. Give thanks for that. Oh, sister.
Yes.
I've got you online here. This is going to be a shot in the dark, but I have to ask: are you at all connected to Sampa the Great?
Yes, we know each other.
Oish, we need to connect, my sister.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No, we can. I can connect you. I can connect because I mean we know of each other. We're all in Melbourne,
right? No,
we all know of each other.
You know the ones where if you don't ask, you don't get. So I just thought,
right.
I had you here.
I love that. You see?
You know
I love that.
Yeah.
That's the way it's done. It's all about the network, right?
We're gonna connect.
We're all here for each other.
Yes, sister.
For
I'm
sure.
gonna message you privately. Thank you for that, sister. We appreciate.
No worries.
Look at the smile. Look
No
at
worries.
the smile.
I know.
with all the
I was
teeth.
gonna say,
All
yeah.
the teeth.
Even if you never said that and the image just came on the screen, I was gonna thank you anyway. You know what I'm saying? So we give thanks. We give thanks.
Now she's a treasure for us all, Sampa.
Yes, I. She's my artist right now, man. So yeah.
Yay!
Tell her Shakira sends his love. You know. Tell her Shakira sends.
I will.
All right.
Alrighty.
Give facts, my sister. Give facts.
Give
Ani,
thanks.
Ani, it's your time. Greetings.
Oh, peace. Thank you so much. Hi, Sister Affiong. I admire your work so much. I want to ask you, what are the most effective, what have you seen in your organizing career as being the most effective programs or the most effective techniques, most effective endeavors for getting more people, to come into the program and, to come into the program, come into the organizing, and just come into how we can struggle and move forward. And that would actually be my only question. But thank you so much for this space, and thank you, Shakira and gotkushTV, for this opportunity.
Give thanks, my brother. Right. Any other questions? Come through very quickly, because Auntie Affiong is gonna respond to all of them one time. Yeah. So you've got like 30 seconds to raise your hand or forever hold your peace. All right. So 30 seconds, kings and queens. You're in tune to the one and only gotkushTV for the Women of Power Summit. I want to shout out to our directorship, in particular, our Chief Executive Officer, whose name shall remain unsaid, because he has put a lot of work into this day, and it wouldn't be happening without him, kings and queens. And so we appreciate the hard work and all these things, So we want to give thanks for that. And I am not seeing any other hands raised. So I'm going to hand back over now to Auntie Affiong to respond. Did you note down the question, Auntie Affiong? I've taken some notes, but yeah. Auntie, are you there?
Yes. Yes, I'm here. I'm just checking out the chat. Okay, so let me start with the okay. Yeah, I'll start with the questions that were asked, and then I will see if I could go back to the chat.
Okay.
So just to greet Sister Yemaya back. That's a powerful name you have there, sis. Hold it tight. Powerful. Don't let it overtake you.
Thank you, Auntie. I'll take that advice.
Yeah. I mean, you do know, don't you? About, the water spirit.
Yes, and she's the Orisha.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you're going to bear her name, then you need to, do some things, So anyway, let me leave that.
I'm wearing her crystal waist beads as we speak.
Good. Yeah. Just to, always just call her and propitiate her, and, since you carry the name. The second person that spoke was my brother, from the Southeast. There's just so much work to be done. And let me share something. It's a bit of it. Well, I was going to say it's a bit of a digression, but it's not. That's the way I, engage. When a lot of you would know the story of what they call the Igbo landing.
Yeah.
The Igbos were the most rebellious of the enslaved community of our people, the most rebellious, and the slavers really hated them, because they would lead things, the rebellions, the riots, the fight back. And of course, the particular story of the Igbo landing, that when they landed, I've forgotten which particular country it was now, and they just, spoke with themselves and just said to themselves, we just need to go back. And go back meant literally walking back into the ocean. And that's exactly what they did. Can you imagine the courage? And they did that as a group. Can you imagine the amount of courage to look into the water? One time we went to, I think it was St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And for those of you who are from the Caribbean or who visited the Caribbean, you know that when you stand on top of those, they're called lighthouses, you know, where there's a watchtower, you know, it can see any ship, you know, that's coming in because it's up on the hill. If you've ever stood up on any hill and you've looked into the Atlantic, you can only see as far as your eyes will take you. So the water is even beyond your eyes. For somebody or people to go back into the ocean in an attempt to swim back home, knowing very well that their physical bodies would not make it, but they still went because they did not want their spirits or their bodies to remain on the lands of their slavery. I'm just saying this to just make you know, this spirit of resistance that our ancestors engaged in. And so when I went to Haiti, apparently there's a song they sing, but I was able to sort of take that song and change it into Yoruba, which is the language, one of the languages I speak, here. But the essence of that song, they are singing and invoking those ancestors, that went back into the water. And the essence of the song asks that, do not let me sleep and forget my history. Do not let me sleep and forget who I am. Do not let me sleep and forget what still needs to be done. Don't let me sleep and forget what has happened and what still needs to happen. Our warrior scholar historian, John Henry Clark, he says that history is a clock that tells a people where they have been. History is a clock that tells the people where they're at now. And history is a clock that tells the people where they need to be. So that song about the Ibolele, the Haitians have adopted the Igbo, the word for them, the Igbos are the ancestors. Generally, it's a generic word. Ibolele, Ibolele o, Bolele o ma jẹ́ sùn gbàgbé o. Do not let me sleep and forget. And so for me, I've also adopted that as a prayer, to pray to the ancestors, not to allow me to sleep and forget. Because you know that when we come into this life, this physical one now, we forget a lot of things. We forget the memory, we forget where exactly we came from and the things that we promised that we would do when we arrive here. And so it's the process of living that, if we're lucky, we get to remember what was the purpose of our presence in this time, in this place. And if we forget that purpose, then when we die, quote unquote, we go back and, if there's some outstanding work, we're going to have to, repeat the journey. So we must all pray not to forget. So I'm just sharing this with the brother to know that there's so much work to be done and that it will be so powerful if we start to share the message of global Africans, with ourselves on the continent, because a lot of us on the continent sort of think, that Africa is limited to us on the continent. And people in the diaspora just think, well, they're just there in the diaspora and they're Americans and they're Brits and they're this and they're that. No. There's a world beyond where we live. There's a global world for us as Africans. So certainly I would be happy to be involved in any work that takes this realization deeper. The next question was about the free trade area agreement. On the one hand, it's excellent, the Continental Free Trade Agreement, because in a way that's what Nkrumah, was, fighting for, that we need to break down these colonial barriers and these fake borders that we have and, begin to reach out, and trade with each other. And if we're able to do that, we don't need, the capitalists and the imperialists, because that's a market of, billions just waiting for us amongst ourselves. But guess what? Even to make a phone call from one part of the continent to the other, till today, the call still goes through Europe. If you're in any of the French dominated countries, it goes through France before it reconnects again back to the continent. So you see that we're still in bondage, and that's what needs to be broken. Now, the problem, so on the face of it, this agreement is, looks excellent, but guess what? Imperialism is like an octopus. It's one thing, but it's got a million hands. So they have their hands in every single pie. So you know what, they're going to do? Because essentially Africa is a continent of 50-something neo-colonial states. The African Union is a union of neo-colonial states. And so it's important for us to recognize that. So what they're going to do is, let's say, in fact, what happens now, the country next to Nigeria is Benin, the Republic of Benin. Somebody has written 54 states, it's actually 55 now. The Republic of Benin. What they do is France or some other person, will export their goods into this other country. So you think you are trading with the Republic of Benin, but you're not. You're actually trading, they're bringing their goods in. And since the market has been declared free now, between us, we'll still be trading their own things because we're still in a state of neocolonialism. So on the one hand, it's good. On the other hand, it means that they can easily flood the markets, and that now all the Chinese goods, can go to, everywhere, and they don't need to pay any tariffs because they've come in through country X or country Y. And that's why, some of the countries like Nigeria were very reluctant, to sign it. So we're still in the dilemma. We're still, between the devil and a bad place. So these are some of the challenges. Who's my inspiration? When I was in university, writing, I wanted to write my thesis, my first degree, as a young person. I went into the library and I couldn't at this table. And when somebody else has used the table, they leave their books on the table. And I saw this book from, I think the title was Dark Days in Ghana. It was a small, cute book, Dark Days in Ghana by Kwame Nkrumah. So, being my inquisitive self, remember, it's a young person. I started reading the book because it looked like a novel. That's what it looked like. I sat at that table and I started reading this book, and I didn't stand up until I finished reading this book. And I was blown away. I was like, wow. So I went to the librarian. I got up and I said to the librarian, do you have any more books by this author? Because I thought it was a novel and I wanted to read more, and if this author had more novels. And she said, there's so many others. What would you like? I said, I don't know. Just tell me or just give me. And she gave me the list and I went to look for the books. And that's how I met Kwame Nkrumah. This must be 1986. So that's about 14 years after he had died. Now, prior to that, many years before that, I was watching a program and I must have been 10 or something, or 12. And I saw this, so there were two different programs. Well, I think they came on at the same time on TV. So there were these two men speaking at different events. And I said to my dad, I said, who is this? Who are these men? I said, I love the way they are. I love the way they speak. I didn't understand what they were talking about. I said, I love this, who are they? My dad said, oh, one is, his name is Nnamdi Azikiwe. And the other one, his name is Kwame Nkrumah. But he said, oh, Kwame Nkrumah is from Ghana. I said, Ghana, where is that? What's that? He said, oh, it's a country nearby. And, this is what Nkrumah did. So earlier, apparently, my dad had mentioned Nkrumah to me, but, it's just a young person. He didn't sink in, I just seen him speaking. So I asked my dad about Zik. I said, what did he study? He said he studied political science. I said, I also want to study political science so I could be like him. I'm just, just a kid. I didn't know what political science was. And he said Nkrumah also studied something similar. I said, wow. Anyway, so back now in university, I now meet his books, and that's when I started reading Nkrumah. So I'm just sharing this to say this is how I met Nkrumah 14 years after he died. And he's a key major element. In fact, my area of work, as a historian, revolves around Kwame Nkrumah, because the thing about Nkrumah is every aspect of his life is linked to different aspects of the global African liberation project. So that's one person, Nkrumah. So intellectually, in terms of my political work, intellectually and politically, Nkrumah is my inspiration, amongst others. Spiritually, Mbuya Nehanda is my inspiration, spiritually, because she wasn't just a spiritualist in the realms of spirit, because a lot of us, we do spirituality and we limit it to the realms of spirit. But her spirituality was a weapon of battle. Her spirituality was like a cannon. She used her spirituality as a cannon against our enemies. So that for me, is my inspiration. Now, in terms of practical political work, organizing on the field, and by the way, these two people and whosoever else I will mention all have things in common. The spirit of fearlessness. Fearlessness. To learn how not to be afraid. To always pray for the spirit of courage to come and enter you, so that it's always with you every time, anytime. The spirit of having no fear, the spirit of courage. Another person, and I'm so glad you mentioned, because I didn't hear when the elder was speaking earlier, when he spoke about Josina Machel. Let me say to all of us that, Josina is spelled Josina, Josina. Machel, we know that Machel. She was the first wife of Samora Machel. We need to go and Google these people so we can learn about them. Guess what? She died at the age of 27. That's when she died, 27. But you know what? She carried her machine gun, the way, some people carry Gucci bags. That's how she wore her gun. Josina Machel. Josina, Josina. Somebody should put that in the chat, please. Josina Machel, the first wife of Samora Machel. She wore her gun like her Gucci bag. And she had a gun with her all the time because she was actually involved in the liberation struggle for Mozambique, which is where they are from. So they were in the bush, in the forests, fighting for freedom. Practically, she fought side by side with her husband. She wasn't, just a cook or a pretty face, and she was a beautiful woman, but she was a warrior, physically, practically. She was in the bush, in the forest, fighting. There were guerrilla fighters. So that's somebody else, that I marvel that at 27, and not just a fighter, they also used to give, the people political education. And that's the other thing. I'm sure I'll come to that in a minute. All of us must be involved in the political education of ourselves. I learn every single day. I listen to things, I read things, I absorb information every single day to continue learning so that my mind is kept awake and abreast. And, it's like, this knowledge of struggle is like vitamin C and my vitamin B and my vitamin A and my vitamin D. Liberation, struggle, freedom. So Josina Machel, I get that from her. The Amazons, you know, it's a picture I have there, you know, photograph on my shrine, so that I can see them. And, you know, the pictures of them, you know, they're old. The pictures, you know, that we have, we don't have pictures of them when they're young. You know, we have pictures there as old women. They're in their 80s. But they are still 6 feet tall and they're still standing straight. They're not bent. You can see that these are soldiers, you know, soldiers. So these are the things that inspire me. And they inspire me because if our ancestors could do so much with so little, comparatively, so little compared to what we have now, how is it that we are able to do so little with so much? And it's because we're distracted, you know, and the enemy lives inside us and with us. So these are some of the people that inspire me, you know. Some other 2 people, Winnie Mandela, I also, you know, I'm inspired by her, by that fighting spirit. If you check online, you will see one of the videos. I'm sure you'll see, I saw it many, many years ago, where, you know, they had the police, you know, in Soweto, and they're drawn, you know, they have their guns drawn, and she's in their face. She doesn't care. She's in their face, challenging them, cursing them, telling them to get the hell out of there. She was so fearless and yet so beautiful and so graceful. And it's only because of her that Nelson Mandela's name was kept in the global public memory.
That's right.
That's another person. And the 2 last people I'm going to mention, I don't know if people have listened to Steve Biko or have read him. That was somebody who, he had the capacity to speak to a white audience without an iota of fear in him or in his voice. Not many people have that. Black people are able to speak, and, you know, we talk Black and we talk strong and we talk rebellious. Just let one white person come in to the room and you hear our tone changes. Tone goes down and it goes a bit quiet. And I always joke that even if a white child came into the room, or even a white pussycat, our tones would change. Another person who had that spirit was Malcolm X. And we all know that. Malcolm X could speak to 1,000 white people and tell them what they need to hear. And I'm using this as a figure of speech to say that we must learn not to be afraid, because our helplessness has been learned. It's learned, this helplessness that we have. So we're going to have to also learn, or relearn, actually, not learn. We're going to have to relearn, because once upon a time we had it, to relearn courage. So these are some of the people of our ancestors that inspire me. The Wakanda Village project. I mean, I just know what I've heard, you know, when I've listened to Ambassador Arikana, you know, wanting to have a project that, you know, where it's a can-do zone. It's an autonomous, you know, zone of African enterprise and creativity and, you know, all of that. Just like, you know, we saw in, you know, the concept of Wakanda on the Black Panther film. So that's that. That's about all I know about it. I don't know that more, much more than that. And I know that Ambassador Arikana is involved in, you know, getting, you know, diasporans to return back, you know, and to be able to create things and organize things. Somebody has asked about what are the most effective programs and techniques, you know, for you know, engaging with people. Kwame Ture, and that's another person that we need to study. And there are a lot of his videos online. His name is Kwame Ture. He took on the first name of Kwame Nkrumah, and he took on the surname of Ahmed Sekou Toure, who was the first president of the country that's called Guinea. So Kwame Ture, his colonial name was Stokely Carmichael. So, you know, if you Google that too, you know, you might come up with some information, Stokely Carmichael. Anyway, so he speaks a lot and he teaches a lot. Oh, and that was another, I mean, when you're talking of organizers per excellence, Kwame Ture's name, you know, must be mentioned. So he speaks on the concept of conscientizing, you know, our people, how to do it, you know, how to go about it, you know, to conscientize the unconscious. And even those of us that see ourselves as being conscious still need to elevate our own consciousness. So he speaks a lot of that. So the person that asked that question, you're going to gain a lot of knowledge, you know, from him, you know, on how to go about engaging people, you know, and, you know, practical things, you know, and the whole theory around that. Of course, the question of political education is key, because if we're not politically educated and we don't have that consciousness, we're not going to be able to be operative. You know, like certainly, you know, on the continent, people's minds are in lockdown, and they're in lockdown because the church has locked it down. The mosque has locked down the mind. You know, we are waiting for the Messiah to come and save us. Now, so if you have a promise that there's a Messiah coming to save you, then there's no need, you know, logic just means that there's no need, you know, for you to do any work. There's nothing for you to do because somebody's coming to save all of us. But the point is, we are our own saviors. And so, you know, we've got to raise the consciousness of the masses. Now, in practical terms, some of the ways that we've seen where we're able to engage our people. If you announce, you know, you're going to have a meeting, you see like this platform that Shakara, you know, and gotkushTV have facilitated. If they said we're going to have some artists here, you know, if, what's her name? Beyonce, or, you know, some other artists or some rappers, if they said they were going to be attending, oh my God, Zoom would crash. It would crash, you know, because of the numbers of our people that would come on board. So that means that, you know, we love social things and we're still on that level. So sometimes we're going to have to, you know, put out some social events that are actually political events. So when they come, then we, you know, along with whatever we're dishing out, we also mix up some politics in the menu. So practically, let me give an example. Sometimes when we would organize meetings in the UK and in Ghana, you know, you wouldn't just say, oh, you're having a political meeting about this and that, because they'll be like, oh, they're not coming. So they can come to some social type of thing and write, you know, on the walls, you know, you have, you know, posters, flyers, information. So you can politicize the environment, you know, and still be having a social thing, a dance or a this, but the walls are just full of information, because they will look at it, you know, they'll be forced to read things or, you know, watch things or, you know, just, you know, catch up with things. We also had an exhibition. It was a powerful, and we didn't even know how powerful it would turn out to be. 2 exhibitions we did. The hidden history of African women, and I've forgotten which particular year. It was in 2000, I think, or so. You know, some of the people in the UK could, you know, remind me. The hidden history of African women. We had that exhibition and it ran for months in Brixton. And people would come in, you know, because it's an exhibition, yeah? So they would come in, you know, because they're more interested in things like that. And all the information was there, you know, we put it up in very palatable, you know, ways. And when by the time they would leave, they would be like, oh, wow, this is powerful. I didn't know about this. But if we had asked them to come to a political meeting about these same topics, they wouldn't come. But they'll come to an exhibition. They'll come to a film show, you know? They'll come to a film. We also took the exhibition. Then the other thing we did with that exhibition, instead of just making it, you know, a normal exhibition where people come to eat, we traveled with the exhibition. So first of all, we went to different parts of London. You know, we're in Brixton, we're in Hackney. I think we're somewhere else in East London. You know, and I don't know if we went, you know, to the west. You know, yes, we're also in North London. So we took the exhibition round because, you know, not everybody can come. And then we also took the exhibition out of London, out of the UK, and we went to Trinidad and Tobago with the exhibition. So, you know, different ways that you can engage our people, you know, in just being creative, you know. So they'll come to a film, they'll always want to come and watch a film. And after the film, then you have a discussion, you know. So you engage them, engage their minds, you know, with visuals, with film, with music, you know, all these different things. And of course, you know, remember, and people are putting it out there in the chat, you know, that, you know, if you're putting flyers and things, always put that there's food, there's a reception, you know. And those of us who are religious or spiritual, you know, host a prayer meeting, you know, host a fellowship. Come, you know, even if we're Christians or Muslims, whatever it is that we are, and it's okay to still be that, you know. It's like a Malcolm X type character. He was a Muslim, but look at how much work he was able to do with, you know, his religion, through his religion, you know. So let's host gatherings, you know, study groups and stuff. And, you know, for those who are Christians, begin to utilize liberation theology. You know, liberation theology. That's another term, you know, let's go online and study that. There's so much we can study. There's so much we can learn from. There's so much we can use, you know, apart from the fact, like somebody has said in the chat, that food is medicine. Okay. So I think I've answered the questions that came. In terms of the those who actually asked. And somebody has, Gotkush has put the link to one of Kwame Ture's videos, converting the unconscious to the conscious. So it's there, you know, for you to, you know, see the link on YouTube. Powerful videos, and you must try and follow him. You know, when I wake up in the morning, ever since I learned how to use my phone in a sophisticated way, because I'm a bit, you know, digitally semi-literate, you know, and and I must tell you that, you know, that the imperialists, they follow you with your phones, you know, they're able to tell exactly where you are. So some of us, you know, aren't too much into technology, like a lot of you young people are. Just bear that in mind. They're able to tell exactly where you are. I was going to say, so in the morning, as soon as I wake up, after I've done my meditation and my other things, I'm on, you know, I'm listening to one of our ancestors speaking. Before YouTube and Facebook and all this stuff came up, I have Nkrumah on tape, you know, and they're just recorded back to back. So I just have, and Gavi also, you know, I just have them in the background, playing, speaking. So even when I'm going to sleep, you know, my phone is, you know, it's playing and it's speaking, and I fall asleep and it's still on. And when I wake up to their voice. So I'm keeping myself motivated, inspired. It's entering into my spirit. It's seeping in. You know, today I was doing some gardening. I had somebody, you know, one of the tapes of some program just there playing. So I'm listening, you know, because, you know, you have to use your time. I can't sit down just to listen. So I'm listening. If I'm cooking or I'm washing or whatever, it's on play. I'm listening to things because I don't have to use my hands. You know, the phone is just there. I'm listening round the clock, learning. And by the way, my comrade sister she sent me, I think it was last week or so. I didn't know that this classical book, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, I hope I'm correct, is on audio. The Destruction of Black Civilization is on audio, you know, chapter 1 through to chapter 15. That was, for me, that was like gold dust. Because then I'm able to listen, you know, I've read the book, you know, and I was going back reading it again, because as an organizer, you must be in touch with things, you know, you must have your information on your fingertips. And the end, the last chapter, I think it's chapter 15, I think, is a practical black print, you know, for how to organize. It's all on audio. So I'm saying that, now you can listen to things when you are doing other things. You can listen, it's in the background. And, when I listen to something once, I go back again, I listen to it again. I listen to things about 3 or 4 times. Why? Because we miss a lot of information if you just listen once. And by the time I've listened to it 3 or 4 times or even more, the thing is now inside my mind. It's there. It's lodged. Yeah. So these are the ways, that I'm able to nourish myself. And with those ancestors, that I'm particular about, I go and listen to them. I watch them. I listen to them. I look at their nuances. I vibe them. I vibe their spirits. I vibe their spirit. And when I'm praying, I pray that they will come into me. This is what, so that I can, chase out, whichever other things are remaining, So these are some of the ways, that, I keep myself on the go, so to speak. Let me look for, Shakara, if you want to come in, that's fine. I'm just going back through the chat.
No, that's fine.
To see. So, okay, am I still interested in politics? Absolutely. Unfortunately, the kind of politics we have on the continent and even in the diaspora is neo-colonial politics. And we've got to find a way of breaking through that, and trying to bring back liberation politics, onto the political realm. And so even on the continent, we're thinking of how we can start to contest in these bourgeois elections. We know they are bourgeois elections, but because we're contesting to attempt to reclaim the mind of the masses of our people, we've got to be in the public domain. Now, that takes a whole heap of money. So we're just organizing ourselves here, and, hopefully we'll reach out, when it's time for us to need resources to be able to do the work, to reach out, to the masses of our people, because it's really about, resources. Let me just quickly, so somebody said, what's the 55th state? The South Sudan. And I think there's even, what's the other one, where they're still holding, the Moroccans are still
Western Sahara?
Subjugating the people. Yes, Sahrawi Republic. So yes, they're actually 55 now. Assuming I'm a missionary with the funds and time to live in the rural, which would be a recommendation for reviving African spiritual into children and astonishing any stories where a community became receptive. One of the things that we can do, learn to do, is to provide service. So let's not go with, we're coming to teach you this and that. You go into any community, and I'll be happy to talk about that, to discuss that privacy. Provide a service, and as we provide the service, and then we begin to have our small gatherings and a service in whichever way, either a school, free schooling or teaching or health, there's just so much that our people need, especially in the rural areas. So we go in first with service, and then we start to talk about our things. Oh, by the way, let me just announce here. Let me take the opportunity to announce. I've been planning, my channel for ages. I'm just been, what's the word now? Procrastinating a lot on it in terms of media. That's where we decided to focus on now, in terms of mainly focus on media. So I was planning to launch on the 21st of September this month. That's Nkrumah's Earth Day. So I just wanted to hook in, to a significant date. I thought I would have been able to start on the 17th of March, but there were just so many little things I needed to do. I haven't done that. It's this first initial channel, and it's just a first channel, actually wanting to do it in a serious big way. This one I'm starting out with is called Affiong TV. I don't think it hasn't been, I don't think I've made it public yet, but if you just put that at the back of your mind, so that when we do come on, you can go there and subscribe, and that's where we'll be putting out a lot of the information, stuff that we want to talk about. I had to be really giving thanks. Like Australians, okay. What ways can we merge? In what ways can we merge relationships between different generations of people? One of the things, let me just say this, one of our comrades passed recently. And when people pass, then you think, oh no, I wish all that time I spent with him or her, I was recording. because can you imagine if we're recording those long conversations, especially from older people? That's just a library right there, So please, let's start to look for, older people so we can sit with them and, ask them things and begin to record things, so that for posterity, so we're able to put things up so that our children also have access to that. Somebody has said, is there a place for the African elite in a new Africa, i.e. African royalty, chiefdoms? You know that a lot of our chiefdoms were actually imposed, they're colonial impositions, so we're going to, when we have a new society, we're going to have to reorganize our chieftaincy systems. And of course, now they sell them out to the highest bidders, and like in places like Ghana and some other places, you even have Europeans who have chieftaincy titles. So we're going to have to reform, a lot of that. And a new society, it means a new society, new things, where we're going to have to have genuine, genuine chieftaincies. Please have a look at this website. Okay.
Auntie, we're gonna move towards a close, yeah. But
okay. Go on. I mean, I'm just scrolling.
No, I know. I don't want to end on it get too late before you speak about the work of Moyewa Taifa and the museum, an exhibition that you're planning and them kind of things there. So I let people know what that kind of work as well.
Yes, and we're going to be reaching out, when we have everything in place. But one of the things, say, if you take a country like Nigeria, it's such a shock, for me. I didn't realize that there are no monuments or memorials to the Holocaust, of slavery that we suffered. And there were two major ports of exit, one in Calabar and the other one in Badagry. And we have nothing standing, So that is work that needs to be done, in terms, Ghana has a lot of that, we don't have that. Now, and lots of other African countries don't have that. Now, when you don't have that, then the children don't know. So you find that a lot of continentals do not know what happened to our family on the other side of the Atlantic. So that's work that needs to be done. And, and that's the other thing. Culture is one of the most powerful weapons for liberation. So, but this is a question of history. So there's that work. There's also the work of, the media, setting up a media. And we really want to, those in the US, about C-SPAN. I love C-SPAN in the sense that it brings events live into your house or your home or whatever, so that's the kind of media, So for example, wherever things are happening in the global African world, to have a media that is able to broadcast on the spot. And what that means is that we're going to need correspondence, and by correspondence, we're talking of even all of us here, people like us, who are able to quickly phone in and say, I'm based in Atlanta and this is what's happening right now, in my neighborhood and This is how we need to work, or I'm based in Accra and this is what is kicking off right now in Accra, and give us an analysis right there on the spot. So 24 hours, we're covering the African world. So this is the kind of work, that Moyewa Taifa is, seeking to do on the continent, but it takes a lot of resources. And, we're going to be reaching out to people, pretty soon, to assist, with that, kind of work, and also, to collaborate. Now, the other problem people on the continent have is a question of power, electricity, so solar power, for example, to have some support with that, either with installations or with resources, for getting that installed. There are just all sorts of challenges, on the continent and in doing the work. And of course, at the end of the day, those Africans that are based on the continent, we're going to need to prepare spaces, organizational spaces where like-minded people from the diaspora and vice versa can come visit. So people are coming home not as visitors, not as tourists, but are coming back as Africans. So I think I'll just, leave it there for now, Brother Shakara. But if you look for, I think even on Twitter, it's Affiong or Affiong TV. If you just look up for that, And so finally, in closing, we're establishing a Pan-African Center in Nigeria, a Moyo Pan-African Solidarity Center. So we have premises, we've secured that, and we're just now mobilizing for resources, to equip it and things, to start to have volunteers and staff, and to have things like solar energy so that we have energy 24 hours, because the question of energy is a fundamental thing. So the Moyo Pan-African Solidarity Center, is being established, in Nigeria, and we're going to be, looking for support concretely from that. So I'll leave it here now, Brother Shakara, but like, you can check me up on Facebook, Affiong, Affiong, but on the YouTube channel, it's Affiong TV. And then on Twitter also, although I'm not active on Twitter, but at least, you keep in touch. And from the 21st of September, like I said, we will, start being active. Yes, Brother
Thanks,
Shakara.
Auntie. Give thanks. Much appreciated.